Story 1. I have 2 years to prevent my father's death, and then I can relax for 7 more years until I meet my wife. Story 2. Study harder and do not wait too long to express my feelings for my current partner. We have liked each other since high school. Story 3. First move. Invest early in technology stocks like Apple, Google, and Amazon, and buy Bitcoin when it first appears. Set my future up for total financial freedom. Story 4. First move. Write down every major sports championship winner, stock market boom, and viral trend for the next 20 years. Then become the kid genius who predicts the future. Story 5. This is such an interesting conundrum. I would need to do everything pretty much the same to create the same wonderful memories. Marry my husband, have my children, and live in the places we have lived. There are many things I would not want to change, and many things that only happened because we did not have a lot of money. I cannot believe I am saying this, but the best thing I could do is to not accept the money. Story 6. All the worst things in my life happened after I turned 10. I don't think I can go through it again, and I don't believe my 10-year-old self would have been able to stop the worst of it. Story 7. Hug mom and dad. Find friends. Go out and play. Read, ride my bike, and wait for holidays. School, career, and money are not problems and will never be. Helping others will make me extremely happy. Story 8. I would pay $10 million for that experience, but it is time to invest a few million in 2001 Amazon and Apple. Story 9. Quit listening to the people who told me I was worthless, broken, unlovable, and the worst mistake of their lives. I need to get a lawyer and emancipate myself. It is time to learn what happiness is, rather than waiting another 30 years. Story 10. Am I back in time? Is this the present, and have I just become younger? Have I been reincarnated? Have I awoken as someone else? I just need details first. Story 11. Keep completely silent about the money until I turn 16 and leave home. Invest in Intel, Apple, and Amazon at appropriate times. Do not get married. Story 12. Invest in myself by eating healthy, exercising, getting educated, and saving my money until I need to use it or until it becomes legal for me to invest in stocks and properties. Story 13. I would convince my dad that I was from the future and tell him not to sell my grandma's house, which is now worth $4.5 million. Story 14. I opened up to my teachers at school and told them what was actually going on at home to save myself. I can't imagine how different I would be had I done this. Story 15. Hide the money from my mom because she is toxic and narcissistic. If she found out about the money when I was 10, I would be broke by 11. Story 16. Tell my father to take care of his health. I want him to be there forever. Story 17. To pursue my interests instead of thinking I am not good enough. To try extracurricular activities such as robotics. To use public transportation earlier in my life to gain independence and avoid purchasing a car when I did. Story 18. I would start a music label and write hundreds of amazing songs. Then I would use the proceeds to buy the internet. After that, I would take over the world. Story 19. Perspective. Some of us are older than nearly all technology companies. I would invest in Silicon Valley technology as a venture capitalist at age 10. I would be the world's first trillionaire, and I would have Elon Musk deported. I would support a future-focused candidate who would decisively challenge Ronald Reagan and bring an end to evangelical Christianity and white supremacy. All Confederate monuments would be removed, and all textbooks would be revised. But seriously, I would end the Cold War and transform the world into a utopia similar to Star Trek instead of a dystopia like Blade Runner, which is the direction we are heading. Advanced microchips would be ubiquitous before Star Trek. The next generation even reaches a pitch meeting. Story 20. The first thing is to keep the money safe until I can effectively use it. That really depends on how the money is transferred to me. Is it already in a bank? Is it a check? Cash somewhere hidden? Cash somewhere not hidden? It makes a big difference. Gambling winnings are tax-free in my country. Betting on the World Series every year and Leicester to win the Premier League in the 2015/2016 season is far more than enough to keep a low profile and avoid auditors asking too many questions. Story 21. I have a family. Nothing is more important to me, and there is no price I would not pay to protect them. Try to harm my children? It would be total war for me. Hard pass. Story 22. You can keep your 10 million. I would pay literally any price for that. My first move would be to start exercising to stop being thin like a shrimp. Then, after a few weeks, I would confront this bully. After that, I would begin living the life that should have been mine and probably be more insistent when, back in 2012, I told my dad to invest $100 in Bitcoin for fun, and he responded, "Yeah, it's cool and fun, but there's no way it will rise more than it has." Story 23. Put that 10 million into a certificate of deposit or stocks to build interest. Then, savor the experiences of being young, focus on nurturing friendships, and enjoy life without worries. Also, consider transitioning sooner, but not medically at 10, as that approach isn't effective. It may be lower stakes for me because I'm only in my 20s. Story 24. Am I going back to age 10? That was 1978. I invested significantly in Microsoft or maybe Berkshire Hathaway. Eventually, I would transfer everything to Bitcoin and Bitcoin farming when it was just starting out and feasible. I would also watch my diet and focus on healthy behaviors. If I get another chance, I might as well make it worth it. Story 25. I am contacting social services. After that, I will no longer communicate with my mother and will start my journey towards a happy life with my new opportunity. The best part is that no one needs to know anything about me since I already possess the knowledge to improve myself and use my abilities to their fullest. I will also be making several investments when possible, particularly in European independence, which will benefit me in the long run. Story 26. Tell mom I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and extreme anxiety, so I don't have to wait until I'm 38 to be properly diagnosed and medicated. Story 27. This is the offer of a lifetime. You are essentially given extra time with knowledge of the future and a commendable boost to your net worth, with the downside of having to redo some potentially avoidable negative events. First move. Enjoy life a bit more and consider investing more in Bitcoin and certain stocks. Story 28. I agree. I will enjoy cartoons and books. I will try to do more sports. As a mature person, I won't be traumatized again by my mother. I will try to leave the country as soon as I turn 18. Story 29. 5 million purchased apartments and houses during the 2008 crash. 2.5 million was invested in Amazon. 2.5 million was invested in Bitcoin. Story 30. My wife would surely be upset, but $10 million would help. I guess she could drop me off at school with our children while I try to be the smartest kid in school for a change. Story 31. $10 million, I would be anxious for the next 8 years until I had legal control of the funds, hoping it kept pace with inflation. I wouldn't use the 10 million and would live frugally until I was in my 30s, reinvesting most of the interest and dividend income. Then I would retire comfortably. Story 32. I cannot accept them. If I interfere with causality too much, it means my younger sibling will never exist. She was born when I was 15. Story 33. Place a bet with that money on the Bills losing 4 Super Bowl games in a row. That $10 million would be much larger. Story 34. August 1987. Buy Microsoft stock. When Google goes public, sell Microsoft and buy Google. In around 2016, sell Google and buy Nvidia. Become a multi-trillionaire. Story 35. At 10 years old, your options are somewhat limited, even with $10 million. Access to certain things is restricted without parental control, and it's uncertain how parents would react in such situations. However, you could become emancipated, as you would have years of memories and experiences that set you apart from a typical 10-year-old. Regardless, you would have years to plan before reaching adulthood. I would conserve or hide $9 million until I turn 18. The remainder could be used to help family, particularly my widowed mother, especially in the mid to late 1990s when expenses were significantly lower. We were relatively comfortable, but even $100,000 could have drastically improved her situation at that time. I would set up a trust for her when I turn 18. By that time, the dot-com bubble would likely be near its low, and I could invest in companies like Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft for the long term. I would also consider buying Bitcoin early. I don't feel the need to invest millions. I would keep $1 million in a high-yield savings account or certificate of deposit. The interest could cover my regular expenses. Other investments would be aimed at future growth and enjoyment. Perhaps I would splurge on a small vacation home or two after the financial crisis. Something simple, small, and isolated. Ultimately, I would not need to work, but I could still provide for my mother. I would plan for future family events and try to address them differently, including serious health issues and accidents. Even if certain events are predetermined, setting aside $1 million could make things easier for them with enough time to plan. Story 36. 10 million back then? That would be interesting. My first move would be to spend $1 million on Apple shares and then buy myself a new bicycle. Story 37. I would run quickly to my grandma, tell her how much I love her, and eat the boiled egg she made for breakfast. Then I would tell her I love her again and eat the other boiled egg she made for me. I would use that money on Alzheimer's medication as early as possible for her and my grandpa. Story 38. I need to look up a few lottery ticket numbers and dates before I leave. I want to reconnect with the 2 kids I knew in school who passed away. I plan to spend more time with my brother. I might also consider transitioning, to be honest. Story 39. The concept is intriguing. If I were to do it, I would do so without the money. As a 10-year-old, having $10 million would raise eyebrows, but I don't think I could go through with it, as it would erase my son from existence. If I didn't have a son or family, I would do it without hesitation. Living through the end of the 90s again would be quite interesting. All the knowledge I have would be incredibly useful to avoid wasting time on an undesirable career and would also be beneficial for future investments. Story 40. Give my first dog a hug and be there with her when it's her time to move on. I thought I'd suggest investing in Bitcoin or something, but just the above would be all I'd need. Story 41. Do not pursue the highly specialized, master's level, low-paying career I believed would benefit the world. Embrace who I am and consider what I truly need. Establish boundaries with my parents. Move out of state for college. That would be amazing. Story 42. DIY hormone replacement therapy and moving out on my own is the first step. I will use what is needed for living expenses, and the rest will go into Microsoft stock while I wait for it to multiply my investment. Most of the people I grew up with I never hear from again. Story 43. I'm not interested in chatting. I don't want to spend time with a group of other 10-year-olds. There's no way I could go through 8 years of school again. Forget about dating as I get older. Even the relationships I had as a teenager to a young adult would feel uncomfortable with memories from my current age. Plus, I wouldn't meet my future spouse for 12 years in a normal timeline. The idea of going that long without my partner is difficult. Then having to restart our relationship when it's already unbalanced? I couldn't go back to my parents being in control of my life either. All these reincarnation stories have you all delusional. Story 44. If I had 10 million to pay, I would be foolish not to take that deal. A second chance on life's important decisions, with the benefit of over 30 years of hindsight, would be worth billions financially and invaluable for the soul. Story 45. Make sure not to alter my sister's timeline until after 2018. Essentially, I am hiding and investing the money for 20 years from my family. I do not want different nieces and nephews, and I believe my sister's life is good. Story 46. Have you ever thought about being a disturbingly mature 10-year-old? You might seem creepy to others. Additionally, you would have 10, 20, or 30 years of memories shared with your loved ones wiped from everyone's mind except your own. Your parents, siblings, and friends will not be the same as you know them today. Sounds like a nightmare to me. Story 47. I would give up every single possession and every dollar I have to go back and start over. In fact, they can take all of my memories too, except for the knowledge that I received a second chance. Story 48. Eat healthier and take care of my body. Determine how to invest in Apple and Amazon, and stay in college as I should have. Story 49. Oh, that was the absolute worst time in my life. I'm struggling because I have to carry my mostly traumatic memories as well. Story 50. Hold the money until I am an adult, then invest in Apple the day I turn 18 in 2002. At 26 cents per share, I could buy 19.2 million shares for $5 million, which would be worth $210 per share today, totaling $4.03 billion. I would still have enough to live on until the stock begins to make significant gains in the 2010s. Story 51. I would spend the rest of my life processing that my current daughters would never be born or exist beyond my retained memory from a previous reality. Story 52. I'm going to say no. Some might immediately argue that being 10 years old again is more appealing. However, it's really not. You have no idea how many people I have known and loved who are no longer with us. Watching them pass away again is more than I could possibly bear. Story 53. First move. Approach my path as a humble learner in order to become a skilled investor. Then live off passive income and never have to work at a job a day in my life. Story 54. I would refuse it. What if the changes in my life prevented me from meeting my husband? What if I missed out on my child? It is not worth it. Story 55. I have to seduce her so she doesn't marry him in 15 years and get killed in a car accident, leaving her kids motherless. And then I need to do something about September 11th. Story 56. Take the money and invest it in Nike and Apple. None of my future mistakes and poor decisions would matter. Story 57. 1. Buy as much Apple stock as I can and prepare myself for a Bitcoin farm by the time I start high school. Profit. Story 58. Do everything exactly the same. I had a difficult life until my mid-30s, but after I met my now wife, everything changed. I love my family, and I'm happy despite carrying some unusual trauma. I wouldn't risk changing one awful experience I went through if it might possibly change where I ended up. But $10 million would certainly buy my daughter a pony and my son a collection of Pokemon cards, as well as funding for university and other necessary expenses. Story 59. Save money. Buy Bitcoin in 2010. Sell Bitcoin in 2025. Probably fill the space in between with experiences I didn't realize I appreciated until later. Story 60. Turn down the opportunity. I have made many mistakes in my life and unintentionally hurt people, but I am happy now with where I am. The only way to guarantee returning to this point would be to choose the same actions, but this time with the knowledge of their impact. I couldn't do that. Story 61. Do well in school, save money to buy the right stocks, and develop meaningful relationships with your peers. Story 62. Age 10 back then or age 10 starting now? In 1971, I would warn President Nixon about what would happen with the Watergate break-in. Story 63. I wouldn't take it for $10 billion. Even though I went through difficult times, I ended up with a daughter whom I love more than any amount of money. I would never give her up, even to save myself a decade of severe clinical depression. Story 64. The original iPhone was released 15 days after my 10th birthday. I think I'm invested in Apple, then taking the profits to Bitcoin and then Tesla, then get out of Tesla before it crashes. Then I just ride the interest. Total amount invested, $10 million. Apple shares purchased on June 14, 2007, at $3.59, 2,785,515 shares. Sell on June 14, 2007, for $7.50. Buy Bitcoin at 10 cents, 208,913,649 Bitcoin. Sell in 2017 at $20,000, 4,178,272,980,050. Buy Tesla in 2017 at $20, 2,089,136,490 shares. Sell Tesla in 2024 at $488, 10,194,986,072,420. I don't think I would have to worry about the economy anymore. Story 65. I won't tell my parents about the money. I would rather receive it when I'm 18 to be sure. I don't know. I'm already set for life. I might invest some, but I would probably just make fewer mistakes. Story 66. Sony has essentially an infinite money glitch, and I know my teachers are unaware. Good luck, Mrs. Addington. Story 67. The S&P 500 index wouldn't reveal anything about the wealth I would acquire. I would live my life normally until I reached my 20s, which is enough time to make lifelong friends, find the love of my life, and secure a job. Then, poof, I would disappear to a private island with security and enough money to ensure that the next 50 generations of my family can live comfortably. Story 68. I am only 19, so unfortunately, my knowledge may not take me too far, but I appreciate the second chance nonetheless. I know I would be much kinder to myself and prioritize self-love and respect. I did not even notice the 10 million. I would probably save it all realistically and then buy myself a car at 16, which would help me and my siblings tremendously. Story 69. 10 million is approximately 10,000 per month for 90 years. You could do nothing and still live well without being extremely wealthy. Good investments with current potential include stocks from Apple, Google, and Amazon, as well as Bitcoin, sports betting, and vintage sealed products and singles from Magic, The Gathering, and Pokemon. Story 70. $10 million at age 10 with the knowledge of a 26-year-old? I would rule the world. I know the outcome of almost all baseball games. I could purchase a significant amount of Bitcoin and invest in Amazon. So many opportunities. Story 71. I would say no. I cannot imagine wanting something other than what I have now, and having to deal with adolescence as my peers for another 20 years just to end up back here? No, thank you. Story 72. Hire a lawyer to emancipate myself from my abusive adoptive family. Buy a home or land somewhere far away from them. Hire people to help take care of me, and live happily ever after. Story 73. I would gain independence from my parents, purchase a home, and hire an adult to help me invest wisely until I turn 18. I would then continue to invest in myself and pursue a good education. I would find a rewarding career in helping others and travel the world. Story 74. Place 9.5 million in an account with an interest rate and study more at school. When I turn 16, I will find my boyfriend on Instagram and go out with him again. I plan to move to his city and become a veterinarian there. Story 75. My parents have set up an investment account for me. Since most technology stocks, with the exception of international business machines, are still years away from maturity, I will focus on companies like 3M, DuPont, and other chemical engineering firms. Story 76. Print all the lottery numbers and the years when all companies skyrocketed in the stock market. Then proceed accordingly. Story 77. Well, this was the early 1980s. I plan to get rid of all my sports equipment and dedicate my energy to golf. Since I'm 10, that $10 million won't be touched for a while, so I would put it in an investment account. When I turn 18, that amount will have doubled, and I will travel the world for about 2 to 3 years. In the end, I will buy a nice beach house in Costa Rica and spend my life relaxing. Story 78. Transferring to a different school was necessary due to bullying. Additionally, dealing with an abusive father could have significant implications, as any actions taken at that age might prevent 2 or 3 siblings from being born. Attempting to address or escape the abuse would result in considerable unknown consequences. Story 79. Tell everyone about September 11th. No one would believe me, of course, since I'm 10, but on that day, I would feel very smug. Story 80. I'm going to handle all of the customers I have to deal with at work and then go back to being 10 with my memories and become a master at Pokemon Blue. Story 81. Find out how to buy Bitcoin and purchase $10 million worth of Bitcoin at the price it was when I was 10. I would likely perform better in school, as I would have more cumulative knowledge and general work and life experience. When I cash out that Bitcoin, I plan to invest it in something with slower growth and long-term dividends, since I will still be a teenager by the time the bubble begins to build and eventually bursts. This could potentially fund my university education. Story 82. Is it the current year, or do I go back to the year when I was 10? If I'm going back to 1994, I could easily make myself a billionaire by 2025. Story 83. I would go back to being 10 years old for free with the knowledge I have now. I would just enjoy being 10 years old without knowing anything. My first move would be to ride my bike and hang out with friends. Story 84. That would be interesting. I would sell myself to my aunt, who did not suffer from war trauma and was emotionally available. Story 85. Wait until the next lottery drawing before accepting the deal. Memorize the numbers, then go back to age 10. The very first thing I do when I wake up at age 10 is write down the numbers and the date of the drawing. Sure, it will be almost 25 years from now, but I have $10 million now, along with the knowledge of how to accumulate more. I will invest in Microsoft, Apple, and Bitcoin, bet on a random sporting event or two, not enough to draw suspicion, and generally live the best life possible with money almost literally coming out of my ears. Then, after a quarter century, when it's starting to get back into modern times, I will pull out that piece of paper from way back when and win big on the Powerball. Story 86. Be on the alert for anything I now recognize as focal aware seizures, so I can determine if they began earlier than the first one that surprised me. Also, please ensure my cats are okay. Try to be more typical, although my mother isn't the easiest person to deal with. I am trying to get tested for autism, which makes me nervous, and I want to be mindful of what was considered atypical in high school and middle school to make things less difficult for myself and others. Story 87. Brush my hair. Seriously, I never brushed the underside of my hair, and it became so matted that it could only be cut. Also, do not get layers. Story 88. Spend more time with my grandparents. I miss them and wish I had cherished them more when they were here. Story 89. At age 10, my mother was murdered. My oldest sister and her husband were in a difficult custody battle with my biological father, who was also my mother's murderer. I would leave my sister's home and go to my aunt's, begging them to take me and my younger sister. I would follow the same path, but I would be a stronger person for making better choices. I would still find my husband of 39 years and have our two wonderful children. However, we would have $10 million. Story 90. I accept it and change very little, except for investments and finding a doctor willing to prevent a condition that they will not diagnose without a clinical event. Story 91. For me, age 10 would be 1989. So my first move before accepting the deal is to go on my phone and memorize the winning lottery numbers for when I turn 18. Any little extra helps after all. My 10 million would be put into some sort of bond until I became 18, so whatever I get from interest will be nice. Then I'm lucky because I turn 18 in 1997 when Apple prices are around 13 cents a share. I buy 2 million worth of shares, and that turns into over 3 billion today. I buy a few properties elsewhere and invest the rest to build value. As things like Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, and Bitcoin become available to invest in, plus a few smaller ventures I'm aware of, I pull out from what I have built up and invest 2 million in those and sit back to enjoy my life. Even though I'm very rich now, I'd go to college for geology for fun. Story 92. Put it in a high-yield savings account and forget about it until I am old enough and knowledgeable enough to handle it, without affecting my future. I would still want my current life. Story 93. I want to visit my parents and ask them to please help me get diagnosed for ADHD, Asperger's, and anxiety. I also want to ask my mom to go as well. I plan to visit my great-grandparents more often and share everything I didn't say in person, rather than leaving a letter in the casket I gave my grandfather. I aim to draw more, improve my grades, and achieve better marks on my 8th grade tests. I want to practice art diligently so I can get into this art school. I hope to not stress about my sexuality after 3 years filled with panic attacks and to avoid friendships with specific people. There are a lot of things I want to change, but the first thing would be to manage my reactions better in the coming years, which I know will be tough. However, I believe I can navigate it if I keep all my knowledge. Story 94. I wouldn't do it. I attempted to take my own life multiple times as a child. I still feel that way now. I would have to endure narcissistic abuse all over again but feel even more powerless. Story 95. Put $10 million in savings and live off the interest. Buy Final Fantasy VII and play the best role-playing game of the 1990s, confident in knowing I am in control. Additionally, consider warning about the events of September 11th. Story 96. Rollerblades Central. I'm excited. I want to learn foreign languages, run lemonade stands, cut lawns, and clean up after people's dogs. Whatever I can do to gain experience and knowledge for business. I would hug my grandparents and ask them to share more about their lives, even when they weren't feeling well. I wouldn't change too many things, just a few important ones. Story 97. Other than investing, I got a second chance at basketball. I was in a car accident when I was 16 that took 3 years off my high school basketball career. I want to avoid any future accidents and develop my offensive game further. Story 98. Buy a stylish house with a large pool on 2 to 3 acres, near or on the beach. Deposit $100,000 in the bank and invest the remainder. Story 99. Well, I would invest in stocks such as Amazon, Apple, and possibly Netflix, as it was not that significant at that time. However, I would invest the moment Bitcoin becomes popular. Story 100. I'm not sure I would do it. I wouldn't even consider it if it meant being 10 years old in 2025. No thanks. Being 10 years old the same year I was the first time around? That's a different matter. Maybe. I'm not sure I want to go through middle school and high school again, but I would certainly do a lot of things differently and hopefully be happier that time around. I would really miss our daughter, though. I would work on being more outgoing and would probably make many different decisions. School should be easier because I would have learned everything once. Hopefully, I would have a more agile childlike brain. Mine is getting brittle. It would be a couple of years before Apple's initial public offering, so that's an easy first investment. I would then invest in Microsoft a couple of years later, followed by Bitcoin as soon as it exists. Story 101. In 1976, I would consider investing a significant portion of $10 million in companies I believe will succeed in the future. I would also allocate a substantial amount to savings. On a personal note, I would try to connect more with my dad. Our relationship deteriorated during my teenage years, and I now understand the reasons behind that. I would take steps to Story 102. I would try to make all of the same decisions until my last child is born while secretly growing my fortune, and then I would tell my husband we are rich. I would not want to do anything that would risk my children not existing. Story 103. I offered to pay my friend's parents' mortgage off in full, so I don't have to live with my difficult parents anymore. My second move is buying Apple stock at a very low price and holding it for a while. Story 104. Invest in Bitcoin, Apple, PayPal, Alibaba, and others. I also want to complete my schooling and get into university. If my 10-year-old self had the knowledge I have now, I could pretend to be a genius. However, how would my 10-year-old self access $10 million? Story 105. Giving the money to my parents and telling them to bet everything on the Giants to beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 42. Story 106. I buy my mom a house and show her the kindness I didn't show her when I was a teenager. I pay for her to undergo the necessary treatments to finally quit smoking for good. I arrange for her to have regular screenings for lung cancer, and if anything shows up after she quits, I will get her the best care available as soon as possible. With all of this in mind, maybe she'll still be here by the time I reach this age again. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.